I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
All right, let's see it.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats,
Okay.
is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us. And I don't.
But morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference.
So before we get too deep into this, I just want to identify some rhetorical strategies that this person is going to be deploying in an effort not to increase their understanding of Sam's position or increase the robustness of the engagement, but precisely to limit and mitigate the complexity and the nuance so that everything can be reduced to rather simple and caricatured binaries and labels, which makes it easier to dismiss everything with more simple arguments. And Sam doesn't really take the bait with the question about being an atheist and instead just describes his position relative to belief in God. And so the individual moves on. And this is another rhetorical strategy of throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks. They're going to throw some stuff against the wall. If Sam doesn't take the bait, rather than allow Sam to finish, this person is going to move on to the next piece of spaghetti in hopes that something will ultimately stick. But they're also arguing by assertion and trying to impose ideas on Sam that Sam doesn't agree with, but because he's trying to deal with a bunch of different arguments that have been thrown at him and he's trying to figure out what this person is getting at, he's moving more slowly, which allows this person to throw more spaghetti against the wall. And this person's binaries, the dichotomies that they're asserting and that they're trying to impose on Sam's worldview are demonstrably false and wildly uninformed. And I'm going to get to them as they pop up, but let's move on.
So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference.
So I think this clip demonstrates the deployment of some of those rhetorical strategies, and particularly the throw the spaghetti against the wall strategy, because this individual begins with this assertion that your morality has a foundation or it just reduces to a preference. And then Sam says, oh, I have a foundation. And then he describes the foundation. And then because the spaghetti is starting to fall off the wall, this individual throws more spaghetti against the wall with this attempt to label Sam's position, reducing it to a little conceptual box that can be more easily dismissed. And again, Sam doesn't take the bait, doesn't want to reduce his position to a simple label. More spaghetti falls off the wall. And now we have a choice. You can either engage with Sam's identification of his foundation, or you can just ignore it and move on. And this individual ignores it and moves on and says, well, it all just reduces to a preference. So Sam has identified a foundation, but because this individual presupposes that the only actual foundation that can exist for morality is religion, then Sam's argument cannot be right. But he's not going to engage Sam's argument. He's just going to dismiss it because he can't engage it. He can't talk about why that may or may not be a foundation without that other rhetorical strategy of reducing everything to labels. So he's obviously only thought about this in terms of those labels and those reductive binaries. And because Sam doesn't want to operate on that level, but actually wants to get into the weeds of what he means, this individual can't engage. And so instead, he has to just dismiss that argument and move on with, well, it's a set of preferences anyway. And so this is argument by assertion. Now, his argument is also demonstrably false because we have decades and decades of experimental empirical research in a wide variety of fields like anthropology, cognitive psychology, evolutionary psychology, the cognitive science of religion, neuroscience, to show the actual foundation of all morality. And that foundation is the evolutionarily and experientially installed cognitive and biological predispositions that all humans have. And this is what results in things like altruism and empathy and sympathy and fairness and things like that. And we can actually observe those traits in infants as well as in non-human animals. So this is a pre-moral foundation that you then build on through socialization, through rationalization, through discourse, through reflective cognition. And that is what negotiates with that foundation to curate the situationally emergent ethical and moral frameworks that we get within moral philosophy and with other attempts to describe, outline, and prescribe morality. And the role of religion has been thoroughly tested and studied in all of this. And religion is just a part of that socialization, that rationalization, that discourse. It is not something that precedes the foundations, the pre-moral foundations that we find in non-human animals and in infants. Religion is secondary to the moral foundations. Now, a lot of Christian apologists want to assert that God and religion and the Bible are the only objective foundation. But nothing about any of those things is actually objective or absolute or transcendent. As I have repeatedly demonstrated on my channel, those are mainly identity politics, and they are reflective cognition interacting with intuitive cognition. They have nothing to do with anything that actually transcends our sociality and our socialization. And so this is a false argument from beginning to end, and it's a rather sophomoric and a naive one. And if you would like to learn about all of this, here are a number of texts that you can look at that describe the history of this kind of research, the foundations of morality, the role of religion in curating morality after it has been founded on those evolutionarily and experientially installed cognitive and biological predispositions.
So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society.
Okay.
We have laws that we have decided as a society in a
Yes.
democratic way. And for
Perfect.
some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean, it would be
It would be morally right under your
not
view.
morally right. No. I'm
Okay.
not talking about morals
Okay.
here.
So this individual showed up to this debate with a plan in mind. They were first going to deny that Sam had a foundation for their morality, and then insist that because of that, everybody's morality just reduces to a preference or an intuition, and therefore everyone's preferences or intuitions are on a level playing field. Nobody has any grounds to assert their morality over and against anyone else's. Everyone's is the same. Now, Sam actually said, oh, I have a foundation, and then described it. And this individual didn't come prepared for that, and so just shoved it out of the way and forged ahead with the original plan of arguing that Sam's morality has no foundation and therefore is just a matter of preference, which cannot be asserted over and against anyone else's preferences. Now, because of the pace of this kind of thing, Sam is not actually able to stop and think about that and talk about the methodological problems of his particular rhetorical strategy, and so is just kind of responding to more spaghetti being thrown against the wall, but it is all straw men. Because none of this applies to Sam's position because he has a foundation for his morality, which was a humanistic position that advocates for the least harm for the most amount of people. And so that is the foundation on which he can say, no, it is wrong to say that trans people shouldn't have rights. No, it is wrong to murder. And this individual, because they have ignored Sam's position, is unable to directly engage Sam's position, so they're going to continue to throw more straw man spaghetti at the wall.
Okay, so here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off
I
of.
believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we
So again, this individual is just bulldozing right over Sam's position because he cannot engage Sam's position because that was not the plan he sat down in that chair with. And so he has to just forge ahead. But Sam's position, that you can have an ethical position without religion, without God, is supported by the overwhelming consensus of every scientific field that studies these things. So Sam is in the right here, but because this individual did not come prepared to actually engage a thoughtful challenge to his presuppositions, and is obviously not going to say, well, I didn't think about that, he's just got to forge ahead.
Take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates, you have a reproductive dead end, so two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a
So what is being described here is not a foundation for morality, and it is also not religion in general. In fact, when we look in the New Testament, celibacy is being prioritized by folks like Paul and the author of Matthew's Jesus. And so this is actually just one contemporary segment of one specific religion. And this is not a pre-moral foundation. This is actually that socialization, rationalization, reflective cognition part of the curation and situational emergence of specific moral frameworks.
problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem, I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good.
A homosexual orientation doesn't need to be justified. It can be explained through biology as something that is just as innate and immutable as is a heterosexual orientation.
Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a
children.
45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest.
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's like it's not beneficial.
Right, there's
for-
duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties.
So here we see a kind of rhetorical whack-a-mole as part of a rhetorical snare that is intended to get Sam to acknowledge that there's a social contract that is undergirding these individual moral principles, which is not really a win in any sense, which is why he has to assert that, well, religion is the only valid kind of social contract. Because again, he wants to assert that religion is the only actual foundation for morality, which again entirely ignores that Sam described a perfectly valid foundation for morality. And again, if you go look at all of the research that has been done on how morality comes about and how humans think and communicate and learn about it, you would see that Sam's position is a lot closer to the overwhelming consensus.
Life isn't about
Well, but
freedom
also
and
I can-
exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you want to impose your religious doctrine
No,
on me,
because
and I don't want that.
you just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
So he finally gets to the money shot without acknowledging that his partner left a long time ago, because he denies Sam a foundation for his morality, even though Sam described a perfectly valid foundation for his morality that he never engaged. Religion, as some kind of generality, doesn't do anything any different apart from appeal to a transcendent authority that it does not have. The only real difference in these arguments here is that Sam is being thoughtful and engaging the way the world and society and humans actually work, and this individual sat down to try to beat him over the head with the assertion that is demonstrably false, that religion in general provides some kind of objective, absolute, transcendent moral foundation, and it does absolutely no such thing whatsoever. And the fit for this video has been the Spawn #1 cover.